Okay, today I'm going to do a video on disassembly of the Crosman 150 pellet gun. The pellet gun I have is a Type 2, which means it has the one-piece barrel and breech. It has a one-piece barrel and breech. The Type 1, the earlier version, has a two-piece barrel and breech where the barrel was separate from the breech. The tools we're going to need today are screwdriver, flat tip, a large and a small, a couple of punches, pin punches, a hammer, and a pair of pliers, and a block of wood that has a hole drilled through it, so when we're going to be knocking a pin out, it can go down into that hole. This is a Type 2, which has a one-piece barrel and breech, versus the Type 1, which would have a separate breech end and then a barrel on the top. And so that's the end. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to show how to disassemble your Crosman 150 or 157. The difference between the two guns is that the 150 is a .22 caliber and the 157 is a .177 caliber. The first version, the Type 1 of this 150, which came out in the 1947 or so, late 1940s, had a two-piece barrel assembly. It had a separate breech assembly and a separate barrel assembly. The barrel is inserted into the breech. I mean, a newer version. This is a newer version, and it has a one-piece barrel breech assembly. Alright, to disassemble the gun, first thing you want to do is remove the two screws holding the grip, the hand grip, onto the tube and the barrel of the gun. You need a flat tip screwdriver to do this. There's two screws. I'm going to loosen the first one here. This is the forward screw. It's about just slightly over a ½ inch long. It's a round head with a slot. Alright, I like to put all my parts into a magnetic card holder so I don't lose anything. Okay, a word of caution. Inside here, there's a very small spring and a very tiny ball. That is the detent to hold the safety in the on or off position. When you disassemble this, you want to make sure you don't lose those parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the grip assembly pressed against the large tube assembly until I get the screw out. Alright, I'm going to remove that screw in the back. It's about a 3/8 inch long thread, flat tip, there's a countersunk head on it. Now I'm going to carefully move the grip away. If you want to disassemble the grip, there's a screw here and a screw right here that'll take the grips out of the assembly. Here is that little spring. And here is that little ball. You don't want to lose those. I'm going to set them into this magnetic holder so I don't lose it. The next thing to do is to take the rear sight screw out. This holds the rear sight onto the breech. It holds this plug in place on the back of the breech, and it also holds the cocking mechanism and hammer assembly onto the large tube. So let's go ahead and remove that next. Flat tip screwdriver. Removing that screw all the way up. Alright. Here's the rear sight assembly. And we got some thunderstorms moving in. You can hear the thunder in the background. Here's the screw that holds the rear sight onto the pistol. Alright, there's a little plug here. This plug can slide out by simply pushing it out away from the gun, and you can pull it out. There's a little notch, round notch on the bottom of that. Alright, we're going to set that down. The next thing we're going to do is pull out the hammer and cocking mechanism. This is a one-piece assembly. It has a spring. This particular model has this notch here on the front, part of the hammer, and it when you cock it part way back, the sear will catch on that and give you a low power. When you pull it all the way back, it will catch on the front part and give you higher power. Let's set those aside. The next thing, using a flat tip screwdriver, a small one, we're going to remove this screw right here that holds the breech cover onto the bolt. This screw is Has about a 1/2 inch of thread on it, and the small flat head. It's kind of a odd looking screw, so I wouldn't want to lose this thing. Again, we're going to put it on our magnetic holder. Now we can slide the breech cover all the way up. It just slides on and off of the breech. Next thing is the next thing is to remove the bolt. And the bolt, again, will slide just straight out. You notice when I flip the bolt over, there is a hole on the bottom of the bolt. When the bolt is full forward, holding the pellet in position, and you fire it, the air comes out of the valve and goes up through that hole and out the front of the bolt. And that's what fires your pellet, is that air going through the bottom of the bolt and out the front and firing off your pellet. Alright. Next step is to remove this screw here, which holds the barrel breech assembly onto the large tube. Again, using a flathead screwdriver, you just have to unscrew that. And now your barrel comes off of the large tube, the valve tube. The screw for this is similar to the screw that holds the grip assembly on. But this screw, the screw that holds the barrel onto the large tube, is just a little bit shorter. It's about 1/4 inch of threads, and this one has about 5/16 of thread. So remember that when you're reassembling. Alright, the only other thing you could take off if you want will be the front sight. And I'm not going to remove it, but again, the flathead screw, and you could just unscrew that, and the front sight will come off of the barrel. Alright, on your valve tube, the large tube, on the front of it is the cap that holds the CO2 cartridge in place, and it also seals this tube. On this model gun, the early Crosman CO2 gun, this is the first one Crosman made to use CO2. After the cartridge is pierced, the gas is contained inside this tube. There's a seal back here, an O-ring seal, and there's this O-ring seal on the front. So this tube here is sealed on both ends, holding the CO2 gas inside this tube. If, when you insert the CO2, cock it to fire it, and the gas leaks out of the front of this tube, it's going to be this gasket, this O-ring gasket, right here that's bad, and you'll need to replace that. Okay, normally to get the valve assembly out of this tube, you need to knock this pin out. You knock it out from the top to this hole. Now the trouble is there's a valve stem sticking out through the middle here inside. And you'd have to push that valve stem forward against the spring tension of the spring tension inside the valve assembly, and then use another pin punch to go through the top to get past that valve assembly. I'm going to try and see if I can just get this thing to knock out by tapping it on this wood block. It may move forward and out if I'm lucky. I'm going to put this on so I don't mess up the thread. And then we're just going to see if we can tap it and get it to move. I'll be able to tell if it's moving because there's a threaded hole right here. And if I see that start moving, then I'll know it's successful. And it is moving. Alright, let's see. And voila, we've gotten the valve assembly out. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and knock this pin out since we can knock it out now without interference from this valve stem. Ordinarily, if this valve will not come out by tapping it like that, you need to push this valve stem in using the pin punch, and then use another pin punch coming in from the side, and a lot of times you cannot tap and get this valve to move out. If it's been in there a long time, it's going to be hard to get out that way. So you're going to have to push it out with something from this end and tap it out to get it moving. The problem is there's a round ring in here that's held in place by this pin, and you got to tap that pin out to get this round ring out of the way, and then you can push on this valve assembly. But the problem is this valve stem right here goes through the center of that metal ring, and you can't knock this pin out because the valve stem's in the way. So normally what you have to do is, going from this end, you have to depress this valve stem, push it past that ring, hold it in place, and then take another punch and come in from the top and get past that valve stem, and then you can knock this pin out. I'll show you what that ring looks like. Let me knock it out. Alright. This is what you got. You have this ring held in place by that pin, and to knock it out, you can't normally get past this valve stem until you use another pin from inside and depress that and push it past this ring, where you can work this pin down through and then knock this out. So if you have a problem knocking this out by just tapping it and it doesn't come out, you're going to have to remove this ring. And to remove this ring, you're going to have to knock this pin out. And to do that, you're going to have to depress the valve stem here. See, it's spring loaded. It's spring loaded. So you can use another punch and put it on there and depress it, get it past this, and then come in from the top and knock it out. Alright, I'm going to set this little pin aside. One thing, you'll notice that this ring has a hole that's offset. It's not centered in here, it's offset. When you reassemble it, you want the face that the hole is close to facing the front of the gun. The front of the gun when it's assembled. Another thing with this ring, this hole that fits this pin doesn't have any thread in it, but opposite of it there's a hole that has threads. This hole is the hole that the screw that holds the barrel in place goes down through the tube and into that threaded hole on this ring. So when you reassemble it, you got to make sure you have it in the correct orientation. Okay, disassembling the valve itself. Let me show you some parts here. There's a O-ring in the front of it that seals the barrel here, and then the O-ring on the cap seals the other part of that tube. There's a threaded hole here that the front grip screws into. It goes up through this hole here in the tube, and it threads into that hole. So that holds the front of the grip. There's a hole here on this valve assembly. This hole needs to be 180 degrees from that hole, because one screw goes in there, and this hole, which releases the gas when you fire the gun, goes up through this hole and into the barrel of the gun. So they have to be 180 degrees apart. Alright. This one comes apart quite easily. I've had it apart, so I'm not worried about scarring it up with my pliers, but I'm going to just unscrew it. And you'll see that it comes apart. There's another O-ring right here. Inside here is some more parts that I'll show you on the assembly. These are the complete parts of this valve body. You have the large aluminum valve body with an O-ring on the end. You have a filter that filters out crud that's inside, fits inside here. There's a little screen, little brass screen. There's a washer. There's a sleeve like this. There's a spring. There's a piercing pin. And this piercing pin sticks out the end of the valve body when you fire it, and pierces the first time when you fire it, it pierces the CO2 cartridge. Then there's this valve stem, and it has a little seal here, little rubber seal, that seals against this inner ring inside the end of the valve body. And then the final thing in there is this ring. You'll notice that the holes on this ring are offset, not centered. When you reassemble it, you put it in so that the hole is closest to the valve body itself.